grandmother, my religion is different. And the thing is that modern Christianity has changed. You go to a church 40 years ago, it followed a pattern. If you went to church 80 years ago, it followed a pattern. You go to church now, there ain't no telling what you're going to walk in on. There ain't no telling what's going to happen. I remember we was raised, it's like they asked Debbie, it was Debbie. They asked Debbie. They said, Debbie, they said, are you Christian? No, they asked Joyce. They said, Joyce, are you Christian? She says, no, I'm Baptist. That's what she said. And the thing is that we want to, and I remember as a little kid, the Seventh-day Adventist was coming around, and it was all the kids was talking about it. Good morning. All the kids was talking about it because, if you had like something on Saturday and Lance, they gave you food and had lunch. Heck yeah. I always went for the free lunches. Because why? Odds are, because Mama was working, so there wasn't no free lunch at the house. If you wanted lunch, you go open a can of beans or something, man, and they had all kinds of hot dogs and stuff like that. And so I remember going to the Seventh-day Adventist church because we was all invited, and they come through with a bus, and they gathered us all up, and we went down there. And I was watching them people, and they was walking up and down the aisle, and they was handing people tambourines and stuff. Well, I'm all white. I can tell you right now, I've got challenge of rhythm. My rhythm is completely, so don't hand me a tambourine and expect me to stay in time because it ain't gonna happen. And I was like, I'm not going to, no, don't hand me a tambourine. Let's not do this. I remember the first time we went to our home church, House of Prayer, and these people, would lay hands on you, and I was like, oh no, I don't want that. That's embarrassing. I've told you the story. When I was a kid in this church, I would wait until I heard the preacher walk past, because he always walked past and he stood by the back door. And I could not wait until I would hear his voice, and I would listen. I was just waiting. I was like, yes, almost. Yes. Because, Lance, I was being convicted greatly. But if I could just hold off until that guy passed, I knew that he's giving a wind down prayer. Now he's going to dismiss the prayer. Prior to that, he's giving everybody that last chance. And David, I could not wait for that dismissal prayer. Because once that dismissal prayer was over with, I was like, whew, I almost got persuaded. That was a close one. I can tell you something, I hid and I ducked it for a long, long time. But I can promise you this. I feel somewhat hesitant to say promise, but I will say this. I feel with almost all certainty that when our grandkids are of age, the very thing that we neglected is going to be the very thing that they're going to want the most and need the most. And that's going to be the church. But see, we've neglected the church for how long? Years ago, I'd ask my preacher, because I would always have this feeling, and Dora, at the time, I was traveling all over the state. And I'd go out and I'd go by these old churches. And as you tell, they've shut down. And man, I felt a sadness. Every time I'd see one, Zeke, I would feel sad. And I was like, why? I even went to my preacher, and I was like, why? Why do I feel sad? And he said, son, I don't know, maybe you need to find out. I'm like, well, you're my spiritual authority. Maybe I'm going to you for some guidance. And so what I did is that I had looked, and man, it was just a deep, dark sadness. And I remember thinking about it and pondering it, and it said, I heard this thing. What was the church originally? The church originally was a bright spot within a group of people. And this was their place of security. This was the center, the hub of their existence. Church was the center. They would have town community meetings. They would have them in the churches. Right. Church was the center. Everything was formed around it. When it was time, they would ring the bell, say, hey, it's time to come in. They also knew that if it wasn't on Sunday, the bells rang, hey, there's a problem. We need to get there. This was the center. And when the church was dissolved, it was an indicator that that community was dying or had died. And the people moved on. They couldn't make a living in Enola. They had to come to Conway or somewhere closer because it took so much to drive so far. And so they moved away. I was watching a thing last night, and it was talking about how people moved from these areas and how there's no more people in these areas. They've all moved to the bigger cities. And I didn't still have the clue, but I knew that it was the spiritual center until I read it into Revelations. And in the first part of Revelation, it says something specific. He talks about, he says, and to the angel of Smyrna, to the angel of here, to the angel of there. That's when I realized in Daniel, he talked about powers and principalities. He said, we wrestled with the prince of Persia. So that told me that where the angels was coming down, they had to wrestle with that prince of Persia. They said he resisted us, but we overcame. And the thing is that told me that for each area, for each little zone, there was a spiritual presence. Think about it. The Bible says where two or more are gathered in my name, what? There I shall be in the midst. The thing is that you have to understand, even though God is omnipresent, he's everywhere. But in Revelation, he says, to the angel of this church, to the angel of that church. That's when I have that revelation. That's where that angel was, and it's just how my mind comprehended it. That angel was assigned to that church, to that area. He was the power, he was the principality. This is how I come to grips with this thing. I'm not saying that it's each and every church, because it would probably be safe to say that each and every church is assigned an angel. But I say that with a disclaimer. Not every church is of God.
That's right. Oh no.
And then did you know this, that angels and demons are the exact same thing? Just because it's an angel does not make them a good entity.
No.
The difference is in their will. So the thing is that then I started understanding the grief that God knew, God seen how this thing was all unfolding. And God, people talk about, well, what God do? If you think that God enjoys watching his children suffer, ask a parent, do you enjoy watching your children suffer? God, where do we get our emotions? They're emotions that are patterned off of the nature of God. And the thing is that is right thinking. God's seen this unfolding. The church lost its light. What was once, because you can't have. Has there anyone? I'm just going to venture out on the line here. Has anyone ever been around anyone or any place where they practice dark magic or spiritual things like that, or voodoo? Has anybody ever been around that?
I got away from that.
Has anybody ever felt and walked into a room where something had just happened? I have.
Yeah.
What was that entity there? What was that feeling that you felt?
You gotta get out of there.
Huh? Am I wrong?
No.
You can feel it. You know it. At the same time, if that is created from the negative energy, how much more so of the positive energy?
Right.
This is the whole point of church. This is why church is so very important. Because think about it like this. There's an illustration in the Bible that talked about that the people, they would come in and they had their coals. Because think about it, they didn't have big lighters in the wilderness. They didn't have Coleman lanterns. They had coals. The Bible talks about fanning your embers. What that is that you carried your coals around until that next night. Then you sat down, you unfolded them, and you fanned these embers, and you fanned that flame up from what was there. The Bible talks about letting your fire grow cold. This spiritual awareness is the very same thing along the lines of Moses. When God gave a message to Moses, it said that he glowed. He had a glow about him. There was something that was projecting. And it says that when he was done with his message, he pulled the veil back up over his face. And you find out the reason he pulled the veil back up over his face because he did not want people to see that presence was dimming. Because they think, well, God is done using him. But this is how church works. When we're in church, we're drawing in this spiritual energy. And I don't care, and I will argue this with anybody, and I'm going to probably hurt somebody's feelings. If you think that it's okay to miss church, that's your business. That is totally on you. But I go by the rules. It says, forsake not the assembling together. You see, if it says, forsake not the assembling together, and even more so as you see the day approaching, and Artie and I was talking about this, the day is not the day of, well, when you die. It's this day that we're all moving toward, whether we see it or not, whether we want to recognize it or not. There are things being played out right now that are mind-blowing. All I can say is welcome to the end. This is what came to me yesterday. This is what was really on my mind yesterday. I will give you the backstory of kind of what's going on and how the interpretation was coming out. In business, they teach you to not put all your eggs in one basket. In other words, Lance does concrete. If Lance specializes in AJ's properties he's building all over the United States. And he says, hey, I need a concrete contractor. Lance says, oh, heck yeah. Never once does he consider, now wait a second. AJ builds houses all over the country. Why does he need a concrete contractor? You would think that he would have the pick of the world of all the concrete contractors. But instead, he's asking, he can't get nobody else? See, this is one of the first lessons I learned as a young preacher. As a young preacher, that when you're first looking for your church, you go to this church and you're so happy to be invited to speak at this church. You don't even want to know why you ain't got no preacher. Think about that. You'll go to so many churches and you'll see the preacher's name will either be whited out or they'll have like a little LED so they can change it real fast, or flip letters. Well, under new management, we got a new preacher this way. But you don't ask questions. Why did you get rid of the last one? Well, we didn't like him. So you got rid of God's messenger because, can you relate to this? I can relate to this. I have felt this. So the thing is that you never ask that question because we don't want to know. We don't want to know. But Lance puts all of his business into AJ. And Lance, it's really good because it's like, has anybody ever noticed the dating parallel to business or to life? When you're dating somebody, boy, they're pretty, aren't they? They dress up. They look good until you start settling down. Now, Dory, they don't even pick their underwear up no more. They don't brush their teeth.
Or they use your toothbrush.
Yeah, or they use your toothbrush. And I will tell you from first-hand experience, A dirty butt is not an aphrodisiac. But the thing is that we just take things for granted because we've been around it. When you're in business and all of a sudden AJ is courted Lance and got Lance because he couldn't get nobody else to work for him. Oh man, I'm going to keep you busy. But after about 6 months, it new wears off. Then you start finding out why. What are you paying? What does it cost you to take care of AJ? And all of a sudden AJ kind of goes, nah, I don't like you no more. You've put all your money and all your business and all your plans, you've not marketed nowhere else. You've catered to that guy. And he decides one day to go, yeah, now what do? You've got a crew of about 30 guys because that's how many houses you've been doing. You built your lifestyle upon that work. What do? Think about that. If you've ever had a business and you've tried to look around and go, can you snap your fingers and go, oh, I got all this new business? No, because you've neglected everybody else who would call you, hey, I ain't got time. I'm too busy making money. I got to take care of this guy. And all of a sudden you realize, so what's happened is this guy that I've been working with, he's changed. Or I've changed. I don't know. I am not looking at what so much is going on because I could track down where the change happened. But the biggest thing that I've learned is that I'm asking God, okay, God, is this the direction? Are you blocking this for a reason? Then redirect me and show me where to go. I'm not going to sit and grieve about this thing. I'm going to prepare. And the thing is it's been laid on my heart to not put so much into this market, but maybe ask yourself, do you have plans for me, God? Maybe I'm not supposed to do this. Maybe it's going to go in this area. I don't know yet. I'm still me because I am. Someone asked me one time, they said, well, Monty, you're not afraid, you're not afraid to try anything. I said, no. They said, well, why not? I said, I'm not afraid to fail. What do you mean you're not afraid to fail? You fail as many times as I have. Failing don't scare me. I'm used to failing. I mess up stuff all the time. If I ever did something right, it would scare the snot out of me because I wouldn't know how to deal with it. I wouldn't know what to expect. And then I would be afraid that my pride would take over. And then I would start thinking that I deserved all of this. Heck no, I don't need none of that. And so God has been laying it on my heart, Monty, prepare for the end of this version and prepare for the change to this version. You know that this is not the way, but there's another way I want to show you. We've talked about, it's business-wise, it's not very wise to put all your eggs into one basket. The problem with that theology is that that's what God did. We, the church, is this model. Matter of fact, Jesus even said it. He says, you are the stone on which my church shall be built. Is that not what he said? This is the whole pattern that the Son of God created this image, showed people. People would come together, they would sit down and they would hear the reading of the word. They would talk about the scriptures. They would talk about what's going on. And they would make it to where all people of all types, and they would come and they would be fed. That was the model. Man, when the Son of God was there and they talked about it, said, man, you better, there's even scriptures that talk about that, you better take advantage of this time while he can still be found. Right. Because when he's gone, he's gone. But yet there were people who say, I'll go watch him on TV. Think about this thing. Can you imagine when the Son of God is going to appear? Because at that time, the people were living in captivity. They were under what rule? Were they free Jews? No. They were under Roman rule. They were not free people. They were what? Slaves. And if there ever was a time that the slaves needed something, the Son of God appeared. I'm showing you how to be free from this slavery.
Well, I'm still in love. Also good, man.
Yeah. I love it. I love it when John the Baptist looked at people and he says, who warned you? What he's talking about is that how did you know? I mean, think about this thing. Satan definitely didn't tell you that, hey man, this is getting ready to get bad. So the thing is that he's making them aware that, hey man, there's something moving in the midst here. So when we talk about the end times, I could sit here all day long and be afraid, David, of losing this guy's business. Because I built this imaginary, I know none of y'all build imaginary scenarios in your mind. And I know none of y'all believe that y'all are absolutely right all the time. I talked to a Muslim friend of mine yesterday. And it's so funny. Do you know that he has the same conversations with his Muslim friends that I have with my Christian friends?